She was the shining star of country music, a woman whose name once lit up marquees across America. But behind the dazzling performances, the chart-topping hits, and the picture-perfect family, Barbara Mandrell's life was filled with deep sacrifice, painful tragedy, and a quiet strength that few ever truly saw. What makes someone walk away from fame at their peak? And how does a woman who once ruled both the stage and television screens choose peace over applause? Barbara Mandrell's story isn't just about music. It's about survival, love, heartbreak, and the hidden cost of being extraordinary in a world that never stops watching. Barbara Mandrell wasn't born into fame, but from the very beginning, music surrounded her like air. Born on Christmas Day in 1948 in Houston, Texas, she came into a home where melody was more than background noise. It was a way of life. Her mother, a music teacher, and her father, a police officer who adored music, created a household where rhythm and harmony were part of everyday life. By the time she could walk, Barbara could already read music and play the accordion. Most children were learning to count. She was playing gospel at her local church, stealing the spotlight with a voice that didn't match her tiny frame. At 6, her family moved to Oceanside, California, where her father opened a music store, giving Barbara access to endless instruments. She learned the saxophone in elementary school and began mastering the steel guitar, a rare feat, especially for a young girl in that era. Her talent wasn't just natural, it was electric. When country performer Joe Muse spotted her at a music trade show in Chicago, he saw something special. And from that moment, Barbara's rise began. At just 11 years old, she joined a Las Vegas show, dazzling audiences with her steel guitar skills. Soon, she was appearing regularly on California's Town Hall Party, a country music TV show. Surrounded mostly by men in the industry, Barbara initially felt alone, but not for long. By age 14, she was touring with legends like Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline, holding her own among country music royalty. Her family became her band. Her mom played piano, her dad sang, and a young drummer named Ken Dudney joined the group. That drummer would soon become much more than just a bandmate. As they toured military bases, even performing Beatles covers, Barbara was quietly falling in love with the man who would later become her husband. While conquering stages, she was also thriving in school, earning the title of Miss Oceanside, California in 1965 and showing that she was just as comfortable in a crown as she was with a banjo. But after marrying Ken in 1967, Barbara briefly stepped away from the spotlight, embracing the quiet of domestic life. Still, something inside her was restless. One visit to her parents in Nashville changed everything. Sitting in the audience at the Grand Ole Opry, watching others perform, Barbara felt a jolt of clarity. She didn't belong in the crowd. She belonged on the stage. With her father stepping in as her manager once again, Barbara started performing in Nashville's Printer's Alley, quickly drawing attention from 6 major record labels. In 1969, she signed with Columbia Records and released her first singles, a mix of R and B and country, which began climbing the Billboard charts. But her real transformation came in the mid-70s when she moved to ABC Records and teamed up with producer Tom Collins. Together, they crafted a bold new sound, country fused with pop and R and B, hits like Standing Room Only, That's What Friends Are For, and Woman to Woman weren't just successful, they were groundbreaking. Barbara was redefining what it meant to be a woman in country music. She wasn't afraid to sing about infidelity, heartbreak, and desire. By the late 70s, she had fully claimed her throne. Sleeping Single in a Double Bed topped the charts, and her sultry cover of If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right crossed over into pop, solidifying her status as a crossover sensation. Barbara didn't just sing, she performed. Her shows were grand, theatrical events with costume changes, choreography, and her playing multiple instruments. For a female artist in country music, this was revolutionary. But as her fame grew, so did criticism. Some accused her of straying too far from traditional country roots. Her 1983 album, Spun Gold, was seen by some as too slick, too polished. Yet the emotion in her music was undeniable. Her songs spoke to people who had loved, lost, and struggled, especially working-class women who saw their own lives in hers. Barbara wasn't just a performer. She was a mirror. Her personal life, while seemingly ideal, held its own share of heartbreak and sacrifice. She had married Ken Dudney when she was just 19, but their love story had begun years earlier when Barbara was only 14. Despite a 7-year age gap and the fact that Ken was engaged to someone else at the time, their bond was undeniable. Ken eventually ended his engagement and devoted himself fully to Barbara, even giving up his Navy career to support her. Together, they raised 3 children: Matthew, Jamie, and Nathan. In 1988, they built Fontanelle, a massive log cabin mansion that became the largest in the world, later opening it to the public as a tourist attraction. On the outside, it all looked perfect, but life has a way of cracking even the strongest foundations. September 11, 1984, changed everything. Barbara was driving near her home in Nashville with 2 of her children when a 19-year-old college student veered into her lane. The crash was head-on and deadly. The young man, Mark White, was killed instantly. Barbara's children suffered only minor injuries, but she was not so lucky. Her femur shattered, her ankle crushed, her knee damaged, and a concussion left her brain fogged and disoriented. For months, she referred to herself in the third person, disconnected from her own identity. Physical therapy was brutal. The pain was relentless, but she fought hard. One small decision saved their lives that day. Just moments before the crash, Barbara had noticed children in a nearby car weren't wearing seatbelts. She turned to her own kids and insisted they buckle up. That simple act likely spared their lives and turned Barbara into a passionate advocate for seatbelt safety. In 1985, she was named honorary chairman of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, using her platform to raise awareness. But even in the aftermath of tragedy, controversy followed. To claim insurance compensation, Tennessee law required Barbara to file a $10.3 million lawsuit against the White family. Though it was a legal formality, many saw it as cold and heartless. The backlash was fierce. Barbara was devastated by the misunderstanding but later admitted that, had the roles been reversed, she might have felt the same. It was one of the many cruel lessons that fame would teach her. While recovering from the accident, Barbara also stepped back from another major success, her hit variety show, Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters. The show had been a huge hit, drawing 40 million viewers and featuring big names like Ray Charles and Bob Hope. But the schedule was brutal, long days, intense pressure, and vocal strains so severe that Barbara needed cortisone shots just to perform. Doctors warned her that continuing could cause permanent damage. So she made another painful choice. She walked away. The show ended after just 2 seasons, despite its success. It was another reminder that behind the glitter, there was always a cost. After decades of fame, awards, and public scrutiny, Barbara made a quiet exit. In 1997, she retired from music, performing one last time at the Grand Ole Opry House. There was no scandal, no fall from grace. Just a woman choosing her family, her peace, and her health over the spotlight. She sold her instruments and retreated from the public eye, dedicating her time to painting, gardening, and the people she loved most. Her autobiography became a bestseller, and a TV movie brought her story to new audiences. In 2009, she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, a moment of well-earned recognition. Even in retirement, her influence remained strong. In 2020, a remix of her classic Sleeping Single in a Double Bed introduced her music to a new generation. And in 2022, she returned briefly to the Grand Ole Opry, not to perform, but to celebrate her 50th anniversary with the institution. Her presence alone was enough to bring the house down. Barbara Mandrell's story is not just about fame or talent. It's about resilience, grace, and the courage to step away when the world still wants more. She built a legacy not just through her music, but through the quiet strength she showed in life's darkest moments. She proved that real power doesn't always come with a spotlight. It comes from knowing who you are, standing tall after you've been broken, and choosing love, even when the world is watching. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more untold stories of legendary stars who lived, loved, and left their mark.